here, and I am going to share my screen, and this is going to work. Okay, you can just move that. There we go. All right, can everybody see this?
I can, yes.
All right, I'm gonna take that for that answer for everybody. So Jill's fantastic introduction was all about me. Let me spend 2 seconds talking to you about Oceana. If you do not know, we are the largest nonprofit organization in the world that deals strictly with ocean conservation. In fact, our tagline is "Save the oceans, feed the world." So this is serious stuff. We think if we can stop messing it up and polluting it and doing things like that and manage our fisheries, we can actually, the oceans can play a role in feeding the planet. A billion, that's a billion with a B, people can get a protein-based meal out of the ocean every day for the rest of forever if we don't mess it up too bad. And that's wild caught. That's not fish farming or anything like that. So that's that's Oceana's mission. As Jill said, I work to fight plastic pollution, I work to stop offshore oil drilling. That's familiar with me in my former jobs, and new to me at Oceana is actively protecting marine mammals, especially North Atlantic right whales. It's the most endangered whale out there. And again, we do a lot of work on fisheries. A lot of that's in other countries because it's not well regulated, or there's a lot of illegal or unreported fishing. In the States, it's pretty well regulated, but we work to keep it that way. So today's topic is about offshore oil drilling and how to stop it. So I will just jump right in here and let you know that Oceana, we are working on this law, a bill in Congress. This is all federal stuff. It's called the NOW Act, the Non-Restrictive Offshore Wind Act. So question mark, why are we doing that? What does wind have to do with offshore oil? Well, the answer is because a couple of years ago, you all remember, we passed a law called the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a fantastic piece of legislation, historic investments in climate and fighting climate change, preparing for climate change, and mitigating climate change. But the IRA did one other thing, just so it could get through the Senate, if you remember those days. They linked new offshore wind leases to more offshore oil drilling leases. And this is a problem. And this is what the NOW Act would undo. It would decouple those two things, because right now in US law, those two things are coupled. And what that means is, if BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, gave a new wind lease anywhere in the country, before they can give a new wind lease, new wind leasing area, they would have to offer, the same agency, BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, would have to offer 60 million acres of new offshore oil leasing first. So I actually don't think this, and I should have said, sorry, my territory for Oceana covers New Jersey and Delaware. I'm part of their field team. We do have a big headquarters in DC. I'm on the field team out trying to get support out in those two states for the stuff we do. So I don't really think this would affect Delaware or New Jersey that badly, because we already have wind leases. Meaning, I don't think anyone's looking to get new wind leases off of Delaware. I could be Delaware or New Jersey. I could be wrong, but I think that legislation that you just passed on the state level, that's just to enable. You already have an existing wind lease. Like, there's a possibility to do wind, put a wind farm off of Delaware, according to the federal government. In any event, 60 million acres of new oil leasing is a heck of a lot of area. To put in perspective, there is only 11 million acres under leasing for oil drilling right now, and 75% of that is not used. So the oil companies have the right to drill in 75% of these areas, and they're not even bothering. And that said, I'm sure everybody knows the United States right now is the biggest producer and exporter of oil and gas in the world these days. So this would really put that on hyper steroids. So we obviously are against it, and we do want to pass this NOW Act. So I want to give you a little history. How did we get here? Uh, take you back 9 years to the Obama administration. Believe it or not, if you remember, Obama had this all of the above energy policy. At least that's what he had proposed. And in his second term, he did propose maybe we will do some drilling off the southeast. So that whole gray area on the slide, that is the where Obama initially proposed that he may put this into his what's called the 5-year plan. And this has nothing to do with sharks. I just wanted pretty pictures in the, just so you know, that's um, so this was Obama's plan. And of course, every environmental group, including Oceana and my former employer, the Surfrider Foundation, and pretty much every group, Sierra Club, every group mentioned on this call, and everybody, big and small, we all fought to get rid of this in Obama's plan. And we were successful. We actually did organizing up and down the coast. Towns passed, resolutions. Most of the coastal towns in Delaware passed resolutions against this stuff. And Obama ended up taking it out of his what's called the 5-year leasing plan, which is really the federal government's way of saying, well, this is where we're going to allow oil and gas exploration in the next 5 years. So that was good news. But then a few years later, we had a different administration. And this slide, and please move it over if the picture is a little window of me and everybody else is in the way. But this just shows the Trump administration, their plan. Everything in red and yellow was where the Trump administration said we should do offshore oil drilling in these places. And the yellow part's only yellow because that's the only place where Obama said let's do it, and Trump said let's do it there again. And what's funny about this is Obama's 5-year plan started in 2017, because that's when his presidency ended. And Trump just picked up and said, no, we're going to do a new 5-year plan right on top of the old 5-year plan. In any event, what's interesting about this slide is the only place where they weren't going to drill under the Trump administration was that tiny little, see that blue triangle below Alaska in the inset? There's this little blue, that's the only place where they weren't going to drill. So this was drilling everywhere. And of course, the same groups that fought against the Obama plan and were successful fought against this plan. But it was a heck of a lot of work. And I'm sure people on this call helped and, got involved and sent action alerts and all stuff like that. We were able to beat that one back, which is fantastic. Moving on back to, again, in 2015, this is what Obama was dealing with. He had a bunch of governors. This is state governors now, that they were the red ones, red being they wanted offshore drilling, but we think that's bad. So the red, they all wanted offshore oil drilling. And again, a lot of the organizing we did in the Obama administration and then into the Trump administration. Just a few years later, for the next slide here, in 2019, you can see that we got a bunch of governors in these green states to say, yeah, no, we don't want offshore oil drilling. The same few states still wanted it in the Gulf of Mexico. But we got a lot of states to go on record saying we don't want, and I say we, this is the grand we, all the environmental groups, Oceana and every environmental group you can think of, everybody worked on this. There's a big grand, grand coalition fighting offshore oil drilling. So that just shows that we were successful. And, the reason we were successful with the Trump administration is because we had already kind of done this once under the Obama administration. We didn't think he was that serious about it, but we had to organize anyway. And we did, we built on that, and we beat back the Trump plan to drill off of offshore. So what happened later in 2020, when Trump was running for re-election, he made a promise to the state of Florida that said, oh, we won't, because, at this point, Trump's he lives in Mar-a-Lago. He had transferred his residency to Florida. He was a resident of Florida. Of course, he didn't want drilling off of his precious Mar-a-Lago. So he told the state of Florida, we won't drill off of here. And then a couple of neighboring states like Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina, generally red states, said, well, what about us? So late in his term, in I think September 2020, the Trump administration took everything from the Virginia, North Carolina border all the way through both coasts of Florida, and he took that off of the table as far as offshore drilling. This slide happens to also show those little dots and those little polygons up in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Those were taken off by Obama. he permanently protected them from offshore oil drilling. And those are the canyons. We have the continental shelf and the slope waters, and there's canyons in them. The Hudson Canyon, Baltimore Canyon. I'm sure people have heard of these. They're really great for fishing. There's a lot of wildlife congregates there, and groups, especially NRDC, made the case to Obama, you need to permanently protect these deep sea underwater canyons from oil drilling, because there's marine life out there that we just haven't even skimmed the surface of what is down there. We don't really even know. So Obama permanently protected them. Trump used the same authority to protect basically the whole Southeast, including Florida, from drilling. He took them out for 10 years, by the way, on the Trump thing. Took them out for 10 years. So how did Trump do that? More pretty pictures, by the way. There's a law called the OXLA, the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, and among other things, that it governs the whole leasing process for offshore oil, and I think other minerals and stuff too. But it does allow the president to remove areas of the outer continental shelf from these lease programs, from offshore oil drilling or oil and gas exploration. It's called 12A. It's the 12A part of OXLA, the law. And that is what Obama used. That is what Trump used, in some cases, to either permanently or just for 10 years in Trump's case, take these places out of consideration for offshore oil drilling. So they're called presidential withdrawals. And president can do that because it's part of OXLA. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So we want Joe Biden to do the exact same thing. Oceana is leading a big coalition of the nationwide environmental groups. We want him to use that 12A authority under that same law to withdraw the entire East Coast and the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And just so we don't think drilling in the western Gulf of Mexico is acceptable, but that's where there already is a lot of drilling there. People do seem to want it there. Even the Biden administration's, his 5-year plan that came out last year, the only place he allowed it was in the western Gulf of Mexico. Anyway, but he can use this authority to call for withdrawal of whole East Coast, eastern Gulf of Mexico from the drilling program permanently. So that is a big campaign that Oceana is going to undertake. And again, you're probably going to hear this from other national groups, Sierra Club, NRDC, many other groups working with us on this. There's going to be letters to sign for non-government organizations. Just, you agree with us, and we're going to put pressure on legislators and the president to do this. There should be a letter from members of Congress for, like a dear colleague letter for them to sign for each other, and then directed at the president. Oceana will be probably doing some mini press events and letters to the editor and things like that. So there's going to be a grassroots effort on getting President Biden to use his 12A authority under this law, OXLA, to permanently protect the East Coast from offshore oil drilling. So I will stop this now because it's really just that simple. And I am hoping that everybody on this call, even people that are new and didn't introduce themselves before, will take a good look at this. And if you agree with us, hopefully you can help Oceana. And again, you're going to be hearing this probably from other groups as well, really pushing President Biden to do this. And to talk about the politics of it could be good for him, to take the entire East Coast out of consideration for drilling, considering that we have, again, even coastal communities, even in red states, they don't want to see offshore oil drilling because we all know what happened to Florida after the Deepwater Horizon. So that is our plan, and we hope to stick to it, and we hope to garner your support and your help in making that a reality. And I will stop talking and see if people have any questions.